Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video we have a very interesting topic regarding carnivorous plants. One of the most frequent questions I get asked is, what do I water my carnivorous plants with? And a lot of times the reaction is, are you using tap water? And so what I wanted to do today was just do a little bit of a discussion on what water is safe for carnivorous plants, what water you can be using and can't be using. Now this is just my sort of opinion. I'm going to reference a book and I'll get to that in a minute. And that way you guys can draw your own hypothesis of what water is safe for your carnivorous plants in your area. Now I know my tap water in my area, so I have a leg up. I definitely recommend, maybe when done watching this video, investigate a little bit as to what the tap water is that you're going to be using, or what the bottled water is that you're going to be using, and you'll be surprised at some of the results probably. So anyways, this is a carnivorous plant here. I'm going to show you a few more down here behind me. They're all set up. I've also got a series of different little glasses of water set up with different waters that can or cannot be used for carnivorous plant watering. I'm going to put this guy down. Okay, before we get started on that, I have an ebook here called The Savage Garden. Now this is one of the books that I highly recommend if you have carnivorous plants. Check out the Savage Garden book. I got the revised copy about 6 months ago when it came out. These guys are based out of California. They have a website called California Carnivores. They sell some carnivorous plants out of that website as well. So hopefully they don't mind me borrowing a paragraph out of their book. I'll read you this. Basically we need to establish a baseline. We need to base our information on something, and I find what works for me may not work for you. What works for these guys may not work for everybody, but we need something to judge my water samples against here. So in the water section, I'm just going to quickly read to you, and I haven't got this memorized, so I'm going to be looking down while I read. Water. This is probably the most important issue concerning the cultivation of carnivorous plants. Generally speaking, carnivorous plants require water that is low in dissolved mineral salts. They also usually need lots of it. Dissolved minerals are usually indicated on analysis as parts per million, or ppm, or TDS, which is meaning total dissolved solids. So, before we go any further, I do have a TDS meter, which measures parts per million. And let's see, water used for cultivation of carnivorous plants is safest for the plants when it is below 100 parts per million. So there's sort of a baseline, 100 parts per million total dissolved solids. It is the use of hard mineral-laden water that most often causes carnivorous plants to decline in culture. Water with a total dissolved solids count of 160 parts per million can be suitable for most carnivorous plants if they are outdoors, they get frequent or seasonally heavy rain, which helps leach out the minerals, or grown in a greenhouse but not sitting in trays, such as overhead like Nepenthes. So I'm going to leave it at that. So we have 100 parts per million is good. 160 parts per million is about as strong as you would want to water your plants with. So I'll put that down there. Now, behind me I have some carnivorous plants laid out, just to check those out. And I have a whole bunch of different waters laid out, so we can check those out. What I'm going to do is move the camera down, so we can get a little bit better look down here, and we will go from there. Okay, so moved down to the shelf there, and I have some carnivorous plants laid out. So this is a cephalotus. It is a cute little pitcher plant from Australia. This is a sun pitcher, or Helianthera. This is a pinguicula. A lot of times they're huge. I put this one in there because it's tiny and it fits between the space. It's in flower right now, although the flowers are starting to fade a little bit. It has lots of them. This is a Nepenthes. This one is a Hamada. And down there is a sundew. So those are 5 different types of carnivorous plants. So the information will be great for any of these ones, and we will start with our water samples now as to what's safe to use and what's not safe to use. So you can see I've got several water samples all the way down. Some of which I use, some of which I don't use, but we'll go through each one individually. Alright, so here is the TDS meter. You take off the cap there, find a home for the cap. When you turn it on, I'm going to try to do this as clearly as I can for you. It gives a reading there. Right now we have 0 parts per million of total dissolved solids. And basically the probe on the end there goes into the water and tells you how many total dissolved solids. So the first thing we have is deionized water. I have the ability to make my own. I do have a deionizer. I use it for seedlings, for the most delicate of plants when they're germinating, but that's going to be about it. So if we put this in the deionized water, you can see it does not change. It is 0 parts per million. That is 100% pure water, just H2O. Now, I don't usually use this excessively because it's so pure. It's unsafe for us to drink. If we were to drink deionized water, it would actually take the electrolytes and minerals out of our body and suck them into the water, and then we would pee them out. So I find it similar. I would think it would be similar for plants. If you fill a pitcher full of deionized water, my thought is it's actually going to be so pure it's going to suck minerals out of the plant tissue and into the water itself to try to reach an equilibrium. Wow, and the wind and rain just kicked up, so hopefully it doesn't ruin the sound here. So anyways, I try not to use it very much, even though I have access to it. Oops, and I bumped the tripod. Next one here, I took snow rain water. So this was just some slushy snow that I took the other day and let it melt here in the greenhouse in a little container. And now this is going to be different for everybody's area depending on how much pollution you have. I live in a small town. We have hundreds of miles of pine forest all around us. Very clean water, very clean air. We have got in snow water 9 parts per million. So that, definitely well under the 100 parts per million, is very safe to use, at least in my area. So I know that I could use rainwater. Make sure if you're collecting rainwater, you're not collecting it out of your eaves or anything. If it's running over your entire roof, which is full of tar and nails and who knows what, the TDS on it is not going to be 9 parts per million. Next, we have bottled water. Now, I got this water from Walmart, and this is the Great Value brand of bottled water. I got to this brand of bottled water because it should be accessible to everybody, and it comes in large quantities for fairly cheap. Now, what is your guess on bottled water? Is it going to be safe for carnivorous plants or not? Put bottled water in, and we have got 225 parts per million. Hopefully you guys can see that on camera there. So that is bottled water. So be careful what bottled water you use, because that is way too much. Bottled water is not safe for carnivorous plants. You are better to collect rainwater or snow water at this point out of the choices given. I actually was looking at another brand, the Evian brand, and it actually had the parts per million on it, and I put it back down because I recorded the footage, so we'll have to check. I'll play that footage now, but it was well over 300 parts per million, so I just put that one back, and I thought, well, maybe the Great Value brand will be better. So you can see now, after rinsing the snow water off the probe, we're actually at 233 parts per million. So in no way is Great Value spring water safe for your plants. Now we're going to move down a little bit. This is pond water. I took it from underneath the surface, and I have pond water on here. Because it's my pond in my backyard, I put my cobra lilies in there in the summertime in the stream. So pond water, I'll give it a little rinse off, is, oops, we move the camera to. My pond water is 16 parts per million. Well under the 160 parts per million. Well under the 100 parts per million. So I would be safe to put my cobra lilies in my pond according to the Savage Garden book. Would be no problem at all. I've been doing it for years and had no ill effects from it. So that is just my pond. Pond water will vary, of course. I'm not telling you it's going to work for you. It just works for me, and here's the reason why. Next, we have tap water. And we're getting a little far away, so I'm just going to move the tripod down to the tap water. Hold on. We're all centered. Good. Moving on, tap water. This is what I use for 99.5% of my carnivorous plants. This is my tap water here. Comes out of the tap. I'm going to give a little bit of a mix there. I have got 19 parts per million. Can you see that? So 0.19 parts per million. That tells me my tap water is very, very safe to use for carnivorous plants. Now, if you're in a city, you may be sucking water out of the ground and it may be full of minerals. You need to know before you just use tap water for carnivorous plants, or you're taking a risk. But anyways, that is what I use. So it's not as good as rain. It's not as good as pond. It certainly has more in than the deionized water, but we cannot use bottled water. So we have 1 fail so far and 4 acceptables. It just fluctuates to 20 parts per million. So the next one we're going to use is, this is going to be fertilizer water. Now we get into do you fertilize your carnivorous plants? What do you use to fertilize with? No, I never use orchid fertilizer on carnivorous plants. I have been told that you can use orchid fertilizer in about 1/4 strength, and you can put it in the pitchers, you can spray it on the leaves. Inevitably, some of that is going to get in the moss. Now, if we have good draining moss or good draining water system, that will hopefully flush out. So this is about a 250 ml glass. I did the math on here, and this is what I came up with for how much fertilizer I'm going to use in here. This is just, I used the rainwater. So whatever the results are, we deduct whatever the rainwater results were. So, and that was telling me about 10 parts per million at this point is the rainwater. I just checked it off camera there. So I'm going to mix this in right in front of you, and we will get the results together. So as I say, I haven't used it. Is it wrong that I haven't used it? No. Is it wrong to use fertilizer? No. You know, if it works for you, go for it. So make sure the camera's good. Okay. Mixing that up, we have got 480 parts per million. 486. It always fluctuates a little bit. So I don't know if you guys can see that. If I take it out, it's going to go back to 0 because it won't have anything to read. But would you ever want to water your plants with that much fertilizer in the water? Absolutely not. That's like 3 times the amount that's safe for them. Would you want to put that in your pitchers? Well, I don't know. It's a full fertilizer, so just reading the ingredients on there, it has got all your normal stuff, your NPK, and it's got all the micro trace minerals as well. Manganese, zinc, iron, sulfur, boron. So anyways, that is what a little tiny pinch of fertilizer equals into water. Way too much to water your plants with. And you got to remember that some of that spray is hitting the moss. It's hitting the surface soil. So you are really putting lots of minerals into your plants when you do that. Now I'm going to go back and just rinse it off in the deionized water because that was a strong solution. So we'll start back with a very clean Tds meter for this last one. Now this last one is just a replication of, I call it bug water. What I did was in this container here, no, it's off screen, but in a little container like this, I took some tap water and I put some bloodworms in there, some frozen bloodworms that I would feed my aquarium fish, and I put a medium-sized earthworm in there, and I let it sit. And you know what? It stinks. It's been sitting for about 4 or 5 days now, just like what you would find inside a pitcher plant, inside the pitcher of a Nepenthes, or inside the pitcher of the cephalotus. Occasionally I will take one bloodworm with a pair of tweezers, and I take the frozen kind, not the freeze-dried kind. I thaw the frozen kind, and I will put the actual bloodworm inside the pitcher. That is as much as I do for feeding most of my carnivorous plants. Being it's in the greenhouse, it's they have the option to get bugs anyways. They naturally collect fungus gnats and little ants and stuff, so I'm not overly worried. But let's see what this is. We talked so much it went off. So back to the 0 here, and we'll put that in. This comes up and it's stinky. It's foul in there. It's 134 parts per million. 135 parts per million. So that shows you potentially about how many parts per million a Nepenthes pitcher or other similar plant has in it for total dissolved solids. 135. So the fertilizer water is 4 times stronger than that, 3 times stronger than that. So that's a strong solution. You definitely wouldn't want to fill the pitcher with that little tiny bit of fertilizer in the water. But it's very interesting, eh? And that's like fermenting worm and bloodworm and everything else. I'm going to rinse this off. So we've now got, I would say that's a win. I'm not worried about putting a bloodworm or 2 in. This is a lot of bloodworms. That was like gross. Oops, and I just spilt a little bit. You can kind of see them in the bottom there. I still am going to stick with, I'm not going to use fertilizer water because I don't need that many minerals floating around and being sprayed all over my plants. I'm going to still continue to use tap water and pond water. I'm not going to use, and I'm going to quote here, spring water of any kind that's bottled that you pay money for. In my area, it seems that the snow rain is safe, although that could even fluctuate seasonally. And I've described when I use deionized water. So anyways, there is a complete breakdown on what is good and what isn't good for watering your carnivorous plants with. With this information, hopefully you guys can make your own decision on to what you guys want to water your plants with. I know what works for me, so you guys just have to find what works for you. Anyways, guys, that is a long, boring video about watering your carnivorous plants. I think it's got some good information in there, though. Stuff that you're not going to find in other videos. So, I hope you like this video, and if you want to see more videos like this, make sure you subscribe to my channel. And as always, thanks for watching.